So I've included some general reading milestones to look out for when kids are developing through reading. The first chunk of reading development really revolves around learning to read. So a lot of the information that I have presented on so far ties into this, really understanding what the components of reading are and how we can use them. So at the toddler age, we would start to see kids understand and name objects, pretend to read books. So even if they can't read the words themselves, which you wouldn't expect at that age, they're flipping through the pages, spending time with books, scanning, using some of those reading skills. Turning pages of books, having favorite books, so showing a lot of interest in reading, answering simple questions in books, anticipating stories. At the preschool age, we would start to see them explore books more independently, listen to longer stories, start to identify letters by their name, identifying rhyming words, starting to read left to right, top to bottom, understanding syllables, naming initial sounds and words. As kids get to the kindergarten age, they would start to produce rhymes, label all letter names and sounds, manipulate sounds within words. So if we have the word, I think book, and we ask them to take the b sound and replace it with the l sound, knowing that that would give us the word look. Um, Making predictions in what we're reading, starting to read some simple words. So either some of those high frequency sight words or words that have that one-to-one correspondence of letter, name, letter, sound. And then starting to retell simple stories with some main idea and details. As kids get to grades 1 to 2, they would start to sound out unfamiliar words more independently, starting to use context to figure out meanings of words they're not sure of. They'll start to self correct when they're reading. They'll start to write their own stories or create their own stories, organize those details, demonstrate story comprehension. So, answering questions about some of those narrative or comprehension skills we've been talking about, and then reading familiar stories more independently. And then by grades 2 to 3, kids would start to read longer books on their own, spell more accurately, use context to figure out the meaning of unfamiliar words again, using correct punctuation, and then starting to add in more emphasis or stress or emotion while they're reading. Once kids get past grade 3, really we start to see the transition from learning how to read to then reading to learn. So this could look like reading information in a textbook to learn about the Civil War, to learn about cell development, right? They're going to start to take these skills, which should have a pretty good mastery at this point, and take it and then now really focus on that comprehension piece of, okay, what am I getting from this story? What am I learning that's new? So for grades 4 to 6, we would see children read to extract specific information, accurately read and spell words with more than one syllable, understand components like prefixes, suffixes, root words. Having that understanding of how words or chunks of words go together is really important in both the actual decoding, the reading piece, and then the comprehension of what we're reading. Identifying parts of speech, identifying themes in stories, understanding figurative language, exploring different genres. So now starting to get into nonfiction, poetry, biographies, different areas outside of fiction, because usually fiction is what we see first. And then understanding different types of text. So persuasive writing, expository writing, narrative writing. And then as children develop up through middle school and high school, you would see them continuously expand their vocabulary. So something that a 5-year-old is reading is going to look different than something that a 15-year-old is reading. And we want them to be able to take these skills that they've learned and apply it to new words that they might be reading for the first time. Fluently reading new words, using context to help determine the meaning, analyzing character development, identifying more complex literacy concepts like imagery and symbolism, identifying more complex themes, understanding irony, sarcasm, satire, and those more complex literary mechanisms, drawing conclusions, and then composing more elaborate writings across a variety of different styles. Really, as kids develop through these stages across both reading to learn and learning to read, they really build on the skills from the previous age. So, something that is learned in the preschool age doesn't necessarily go away. We want them to be able to take those skills and build on them to help continue their literacy growth and learn new things. So what about spelling, right? So far, I focus a lot on reading, the actual reading of the literacy component. So spelling is very similar. Development follows reading development. It usually follows a similar trajectory where kids will start to spell those sight words or more simple words with one-to-one correspondences between letter name, letter sound. And then they'll continue to build those skills. Usually, we see reading strengthen before spelling skills strengthen because children rely a lot on those established phonological skills in order to spell different words. So, spelling development occurs across a hierarchy of stages. So, basically, once kids are learning to spell, right, they're relying more on their internal processes to identify the sounds that they're hearing, break down the words. So it's okay if at the beginning, right, we see some spelling errors as these phonological skills and these decoding and encoding is a fancy word for spelling, as these skills start to strengthen. But a lot of the strategies that I have given for reading can also be applied when working on spelling. So what is the role of the speech therapist in all this? So speech language pathologists can help to assess, diagnose, and treat literacy disorders in children of any age. Right, literacy development can start as young as 2 to 3, especially with those comprehension and vocabulary skills. So we can really look at any child at any point if you're noticing difficulty and see where the breakdown is, give strategies to help strengthen that, complex breakdown area and help to make sure that they stay on track for the rest of literacy development. We would use, depending on the age and what we're noticing, we have different assessment tools that can really help to examine all the different areas of literacy. So pre-literacy skills, reading skills, spelling skills, comprehension skills. And then we would help determine a specialized treatment plan that can help overcome some of the different deficit areas and then help build confidence in reading and help build motivation to read too, right? If reading is something that's challenging, kids aren't going to want to do it, but the more that they get that support, then they will also build that enjoyment and that excitement around reading as well.